You are standing in a cell in medieval London. The door has just swung shut, the bolt has dropped, and one question now matters more than any other. How do you get out? This is the story of whether you could escape a prison in medieval London. And the surprising part is that the stone walls were almost the least of your worries. The real locks were made of something else entirely. Using AI trained on old court rolls, city ordinances, and the ledgers of men who got rich keeping other people caged, we rebuild this lost London from the inside of its cells. At the western edge of the city stood a hulking gatehouse straddling the road, with a prison folded into its stone. They called it Newgate, and the smell reached you before the dark did. Damp, smoke, unwashed bodies, the sour breath of too many people in too little air. Here is the first thing almost everyone gets wrong. This was not a punishment. When Henry II set Newgate up in the year 1188, a prison was simply a place to hold you until your trial, or until you paid what you owed. The cell was a waiting room. What came after was the punishment, which means your first way out was never a tunnel. It was your purse. The men who ran these prisons, the keepers, were paid no wage at all. They bought the job because the job was a gold mine. They were allowed to charge the prisoners for everything. There was a fee just to walk in the door, a fee for a bed, a fee for food, a fee for lighter irons. And, this one I had to read twice, a fee to have your chains put on, and then another fee to have them taken off. You paid to be shackled, and you paid again to be freed. By 1393, the city had to pass a rule forbidding keepers from charging prisoners for a candle or a place to sleep, which tells you exactly how far it had gone. If you had money, the walls grew soft. You could buy your way onto the cleaner side, away from the dark stone hold. If you were a debtor in the Fleet, you could even lodge in the streets just outside, in a zone they called the Liberty, and stroll back at night. And if your debt was the only thing keeping you, paying it unlocked the door legally. The whole place ran on coin. To me, that is the part that stings. A medieval prison didn't really hold you, it billed you, and freedom went to whoever could pay the invoice. If that strikes you as plain injustice, tap the like and stand with me. If you think it was just a rough age charging its way through a problem, take the other side down in the comments. Either way, not everyone had a purse, so let's find the other doors. The second door was the oldest power in England, and it didn't answer to the king. It was the church. If the law was closing in, you could run for a church and throw yourself on holy ground, and once inside, no sheriff could legally drag you out. You had 40 days of sleeping on cold flagstones while the city waited at the door. And at the end of it, you faced a strange and total choice: stand trial or abjure the realm. To abjure the realm was to swear before God that you would leave England and never return.
I swear to depart this realm and never return.
They sent you off barefoot, clutching a rough wooden cross, ordered to walk to an assigned port and board the first ship out. And sometimes guards walked with you, not to stop you, but to keep furious neighbors from settling the score on the road. You lost your home, your country, everything you knew, but you kept your life. London was stitched with these holy bolt holes, places like Saint-Martin-le-Grand, little islands where the king's writ simply stopped, a whole map of escape hatches hidden inside the city. The third door was the strangest of all, and it opened with a sentence. The church claimed the right to try its own clergymen in its own gentler courts, far from the worst the law could do. The trouble was proving you were clergy. The test: they handed you a Bible and asked you to read a single verse, a psalm, a plea for mercy.
Have mercy upon me, O God.
Read it convincingly. and your case slipped sideways into the church's hands. It became known as the neck verse because it could quite literally save your neck. And before long, men who could not read a word were memorizing that one passage by heart, reciting it in court with their lives riding on the performance. I would genuinely love to know how convincing some of those recitals were. If you can picture pulling that off, bluffing your way through one line of Latin with everything on the line, tell me how you think it went, down below. And if law and faith and money all failed you, there was always the blunt approach. Walk out. Medieval jails were often badly built and worse guarded, and even the most fearsome of them all leaked. The Tower of London, a fortress, a symbol, supposedly unbreakable, handed its very first prisoner a humiliating lesson. In the year 1100, a bishop named Ranulf Flambard became the first man the tower ever locked away. Which is almost too neat, because Flambard had helped build the place. He played the genial host, throwing feasts for his guards, until one February night he made certain the wine kept flowing. A rope had been smuggled to him inside a barrel of it. As the guards slid into a drunken sleep, he tied the rope to a pillar, slipped through a window, and lowered himself down the wall of the tower he had helped raise. The rope fell short of the ground, the story goes, leaving him to manage the last drop by hand. Friends waited below with horses. By morning he was riding for the coast and a ship to Normandy. The tower's first prisoner was also its first escape. 2 centuries later, a rebel lord named Roger Mortimer borrowed the very same trick and improved it. In 1323, his allies slipped a sleeping draught into the guard's wine. An inside man carried a crowbar and rope ladders to his cell, and over the walls Mortimer went, fleeing to France, then returning to topple a king. A barrel of wine and a length of rope. The oldest escape in the book, and it kept working. And the crowd had its own method. When the Great Revolt of 1381 came roaring into London, the rebels simply threw open the city's jails and let everyone inside walk out into the daylight. But there was one door that opened far more often than any rope or any psalm, and no one ever wished for it. The cells were so crowded, so foul, so starved of clean air, that sickness moved through them like a tide. They called it jail fever. In a single stretch of 1315 and 16, the coroner was looking into 62 people who entered Newgate and never came out again. You did not always need a wall to be a fatal thing. Sometimes the air was enough. Could you escape a prison in medieval London? The honest answer is that it depended on almost everything except the strength of the walls. It depended on the weight of your purse, on whether you could read, on how close you stood to a church door, on whether you had friends willing to smuggle in a barrel of wine. Justice was not blind here. It was for sale, for rent, and occasionally for the taking. Newgate itself outlasted nearly everyone who ever feared it, standing for some 700 years before it finally came down. Walk to that spot today, and you find the Old Bailey, England's central criminal court, still doing justice on the same ground. The echoes are everywhere if you listen. When someone lands in the clink, they're borrowing the name of a real prison that once stood in Suffolk. When a lucky soul saves his neck, he's quoting a psalm that desperate men once whispered to stay alive. The bars are gone, the words are still here. We are the team behind History Recreated, and we go looking for the doors history left ajar, the strange human ways people slipped through the cracks of their own age. If this one held you to the end, subscribe and break out with us again, and leave us the name of a place or a person you'd want us to unlock next. Because in the end, the walls were never really the point. What kept you in or set you free was everything written on the other side of the stone.